Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I really don't understand how anyone can be as horribly narrow minded as my mother in law, but I'm lucky my husband taught her a lesson. Some background on my mother in law and my husband's family in general. They come from a different culture than me, and literally no one in his family was happy about him marrying me. I've tried my best to be a part of their family, learn about their culture, and do my best to make them like me, but it has just never worked. He didn't even tell his family that we were dating before we got engaged because he knew his mom in particular would create a huge fuss. I had trouble understanding their whole dynamic, but with time, I just accepted it as something I have to live with. After he proposed and I said yes, we took a deep breath and decided to just rip off the band-aid. The reaction was pretty expected. She was so dramatic. She told him that he was bringing in a member into the family who will never understand their culture and make everything harder for everyone. This was such a change from my family, where my parents were just happy and barely even reacted. It was almost hilarious. Anyway, we got engaged, then we got married. The wedding itself was insanely complicated. They were not ready to settle for anything except a wedding fully based on their cultural practices. So my dream of walking down the aisle in a white dress never really came true. I endured everything because I love my husband and he has been on my side since day one. He literally offered to walk out of his family for me if that's what I wanted. But I didn't want to be the reason their family breaks apart. I knew that would just prove my mother in law right, and I didn't want to give her that satisfaction at all. So now you know about my insanely complicated marriage. I put up with everything till now, but what my mother in law did this time has just crossed all limits, and I'm so glad this chapter is over now. My husband and I got married 3 years ago. We've been trying to have a baby ever since because we've always wanted to have a family. We've tried, but it was as if luck wasn't in our favor. We went to so many doctors and tried every trick in the book. All our reports were normal, and the doctors just told us we have to be patient. So patience it was. So much patience and praying, and this year we finally had our little miracle. We were overjoyed, and I think this is the one time I've seen my mother-in-law happy about something regarding me. It's actually the first grandchild in their family because my husband doesn't have any siblings, so everyone was excited. I was hopeful that things will finally come to good terms with my mother-in-law. Well, to put it bluntly, I was dead wrong. I was so wrong that it's literally laughable. Anyway, the pregnancy was going well. It still is going well, and I'm so incredibly grateful. And last week, we went to the doctors and she told us we can find out the baby's gender now. She gave us an envelope instead of telling us because we weren't sure if we wanted to know just yet. Well, over the last week, we decided that we did indeed want to know the baby's gender. I particularly want to find out because I think it'll help me connect with the baby more. My husband told me it's completely up to me, and together we decided to throw a very intimate gender reveal party. It was just going to be our families and our closest friends. Two of them will probably be our child's godparents. This sort of gender reveal is what I've always wanted, and I was very, very excited. I should have predicted that my mother-in-law would do something horrendous again, because that's basically her job at this point. Anyway, we decided on the gender reveal party and invited my mother-in-law and father-in-law. Let me just tell you that gender reveals aren't really a thing in my husband's culture, so he had to convince his family a little about the whole concept, and they agreed to be a part of it, even though they were a bit skeptical. My husband warned me about this, but I didn't pay much attention to it. In my mind, they would have just been a little uncomfortable, which was more than fine with me. The day of the baby shower arrived, and I was so excited. My husband and I put up a little decor. Our friends came over with the cutest gifts, and everyone was amazing. My best friend knew the gender already and arranged a pinata cake with this amazing bakery we have loved forever. It was the typical pink candies for a girl and blue for a boy. I was happy with anything. I just want a healthy and happy little baby of my own. And my husband was actually hoping for a girl. The moment of truth came. We all gathered around the cake, and my husband and I cut it to reveal a little cascade of pink candies. A baby girl. Everyone was so happy, and I was drowned in bear hugs and a chorus of congratulations. It was just like I had always dreamt of. After the initial commotion, I looked at my husband and found him staring at his mother. When I tell you she literally looked like someone had drenched her in ice-cold water, I'm not exaggerating. My husband saw me looking at him and smiled nervously at me. He then kind of slipped out of the room, grabbing my mother-in-law with him. Before I could say anything, I was interrupted by our friends who were all gushing about the baby and excited. I tried to focus on them, but couldn't get my mother-in-law's face out of my mind. I didn't understand what happened. I was even more confused about my husband taking her out of the room. They came back around 15 minutes later, and my husband announced to the room that my mother-in-law and father-in-law had to leave because something unavoidable had come up. Again, before I could say anything, he came to me, squeezed my hand, and told me he'll explain everything later. My mother-in-law and father-in-law left without saying goodbye. I was just utterly confused, but decided to focus on the party and our guests. After everyone had left and we finally had time to talk, I asked my husband to explain what exactly happened at the party and why his parents left without saying a word about the baby. My husband looked deeply uncomfortable and told me that it's nothing I needed to worry about. I obviously pushed him, and he finally managed to say that his parents were upset that the first grandchild in the family was not a son. I was just bewildered. What century are we living in? I mean, I know his parents are all traditional and everything, but that seemed extreme even to me. My husband apologized again and again, saying that he'll make sure they'll never bother me about it and to just ignore them. I was just so horrified and uncomfortable. I couldn't even say anything. The baby shower was 3 days ago, and things have been weird. My mother-in-law isn't speaking to my husband, and he says that he doesn't care at all, but I know that he's hurt. I wish I could help him somehow, but knowing what she said and what she feels, I'm too disgusted to do anything. I thought being upset about a granddaughter was the lowest my mother-in-law could fall, but boy, was I wrong. My mother-in-law asked my husband to visit them, and he refused, but she got very emotional, and I told him it's all right to go. When he came back, he was absolutely fuming. He told me that he's had enough of her, and she's doing way too much now. I asked him what he meant, and he told me that my mother-in-law had said a lot of nonsense about how disappointing it is that I took so long to give them a grandchild, and now that I'm finally pregnant, it's still a girl. Obviously, this made him very angry, especially after we've prayed and hoped every day for the last 3 years for a baby. He told his mom that he doesn't want to hear a single word about this when she told him to calm down because she had his best interest in mind. Guess what she said next? She asked my husband to leave me. Leave me because I can't give them a grandson. At this point, I started laughing at the ridiculousness of it all. What on earth was she talking about? Has she actually lost her mind? My husband hugged me and told me to never think of this again because he has something in mind. He said we have to see my mother-in-law tomorrow, but that'll be the last time ever. I can't believe what my husband did. I mean, I knew he was strongly opposed to his mother and whatever she stands for, but this was so unexpected. So my mother-in-law and father-in-law visited today. I was sitting on the couch with my husband and she wouldn't even look at me. My husband addressed everyone and said that he has some important papers that everyone needed to hear about. He left to get the papers, and my mother-in-law literally looked at me and said he's finally going to leave me now. I knew that was the last thing that could happen, though I just ignored her. He walked in with the papers, and my mother-in-law looked delighted and asked him if those were divorce papers. My husband said no, obviously. Then he told his mom and dad that these were papers applying for an out-of-state transfer in his workplace. He said that as soon as the baby was born and after the initial adjustment period, we were going to be selling the house and moving to a different state. He said that my mother-in-law and father-in-law will never know where we are going and will have no way of contacting us ever. There was such a stunned silence in the room. My mother-in-law was in total disbelief and asked him not to say ridiculous things. My husband took one look at her and asked her to leave our house before he calls the police. Mother-in-law proceeded to throw a mega tantrum, literally screaming at us. My husband calmly told his dad to leave and take mother-in-law with him, and somehow we managed to kick her out of the house. I'm honestly stunned. This is such a huge step, and I'm so proud of my husband for taking it. To answer your questions, no, my husband didn't tell me about what he was planning to. I'm a stay-at-home mom and do not mind shifting at all. Overall, I'm happy with the situation. I'm glad your husband has kicked your toxic mother-in-law and father-in-law from your life, but the way he did it is a bit weird. I think as his spouse, you deserve to know about important changes like the one he took the liberty to make. Well, as long as you're happy. As someone with really controlling parents, I can empathize with your situation. I'm sure your husband took these steps because he knows nothing else will work. Good luck with the baby, OP. I, 26, male, fell in love with my sister's partner. This began around a year ago when my sister had to travel for work for an extended period of time, and her partner got into a pretty bad car accident just a week after she left. Without going into too much detail about his injuries, he needed someone staying with him and helping him get around for a while. I do freelance work from home to support myself, so they asked me if I could go and stay in their home for a while as her partner's temporary caregiver while he recovered. I immediately agreed, wanting to help in any way I could. Her partner and I were already good friends prior to this situation, but living with someone and being there in some of their most intimate moments obviously strengthens the bond even further. We bonded over our many shared interests and got to talk about deeper things that were typically off limits in a group setting. By the time I realized my changing feelings, it was too late to distance myself from the situation. I had committed to helping him for the duration of his recovery, and a sudden change in my behavior would just tip him off that something was wrong and add unnecessary stress to an already hard time. He had expressed feeling like a burden more than once, so I pulled away the little bit I could, and we rode out those last few weeks together before he was back on his feet again. To make a long story short, the period that followed was full of guilt from me and confusion from my sister's partner by my quick disappearance following our time together. He eventually texted me and asked if he had done something wrong during our time together and pissed me off somehow, so we met up and I came clean. The conversation was a brutal one, and it eventually ended in both of us agreeing we would limit our time together from now on, as there was no hope for an actual future for us. It would simply be too weird, given the history. Fast forward to now. The two of them got engaged somewhat recently, and this past Saturday, my sister asked me to be in her wedding as part of her bridal party. I asked her to let me think about it, which already caused some tension, and finally told her yesterday that I was incredibly grateful for her offer, but I had to turn it down. I'm fine attending as a guest, but being in the party just feels too much. She's now furious with me and is demanding I give her an explanation at the very least, something I have refused. AITA? Addressing comments, questions. He did reciprocate my feelings. They didn't have a traditional proposal. My sister is the one who initiated the conversations. In response to inquiries about the status of their relationship now, he told me that he respects my sister and doesn't want to end the relationship abruptly with no real reason he can disclose. He has had relationships with men in the past, and she knows this. He and I text occasionally, but not often at all. After some thought, I don't feel comfortable taking this directly to my sister. There are two people I care about being impacted by my choices. I think my next move is meeting up with partner and seeing how he feels about telling her. YTA, for having an emotional affair with your sister's fiancé for sure. Was it just emotional though? Did you sleep together? You already admitted the feelings were reciprocated. Why stop now? Your poor sister though. She deserves better than this. Grow a pair and tell her the truth. Don't let her marry someone who doesn't love her back. NAH. So here's the thing. Florence Nightingale syndrome is a thing where someone giving care falls in love with their patient. Transference is also a thing where a patient falls in love with their caregiver. They're all feelings based on the fact that aspects of caring for a person or being cared for in a medical situation are, by nature, extremely intimate. I'm not saying both of your feelings boil down to simply this, but it literally sounds like the classic presentation of both. It's a trope for a reason. You talked about it like adults, were honest, and you both decided to walk away. You can't help what you feel, but you can help what you do, and you're doing the things socially considered correct. All that said, if you have a therapist, talk to them about this. They'll be able to help you cope. I know this whole situation sounds stupid, but bear with me. I, female, 20s, am hosting Christmas this year with my husband, male, 20s. My parents split up when I was around 5 years old. My dad is pretty much out of the picture. When I was 16, my mom, female, 50s, met my stepdad, Tom, male, 60s. They met online and got married after only knowing each other for 3 months. Teenage angst was probably at play, but I never really liked Tom, and at the time, I thought my mum was ridiculous for marrying someone who she only knew for such a short period of time. Anyway, a few days ago, my mom invited me over. I helped her put away some shopping when I got there. There were some small bottles of Pepsi that I forgot to put in the fridge, so they were just sitting on the counter. A couple of hours later, Tom gets home from work and he sees the Pepsi bottles on the counter and he starts flipping out. He goes on about how he can't drink room temperature Pepsi and that they should be in the fridge. I told him it was me and that I just forgot to put them in the fridge and apologized. Apparently that wasn't good enough and Tom went off about how stupid it was to not put them in the fridge and that I have no common sense. I sarcastically told him that this is a disaster and however will he recover from this. Tom called me a useless bitch. I decided to just leave, and later I texted my mom and Tom and told them that unless he genuinely apologizes for calling me a bitch and being so rude to me over Pepsi bottles, Tom's not invited to Christmas anymore. My mom sends me paragraph after paragraph making excuses for Tom and saying that I'm being unfair. She said I'm making her choose between me and Tom and that I'm unfairly putting her in a difficult position and accused me of punishing her for a situation she didn't cause. I told her I don't care and that no apology means no invite for Tom and that I don't want him attending if he can't apologize for his actions. She said I'm being petty and acting like a child with birthday party invites and said I'm being a Scrooge. She keeps sending me pictures of Scrooge and the Grinch and saying, "That's you." I really don't know if I'm actually being petty or going too far. Nope. Hold the line. I have a feeling Tom has never apologized for anything in his life. It might be good exercise for him. Your mom is blaming the wrong person. It's understandable you don't want him at your house after that. NTA. NTA, but Tom and your mom are. If my boyfriend called my daughter a useless bitch, especially over something ridiculous such as the placement of Pepsi bottles, he'd be out the door. I wouldn't be taking his side. Mom is super pathetic for sticking up for her abusive husband and being so juvenile, abusive herself. I'd block them both and enjoy Christmas in peace. NTA. You apologized for your mistake and he blew it out of proportion. He berated you and you decided to leave the situation. You set a boundary for yourself to avoid someone who treated you unfairly. All healthy things. To some extent, you are making your mother choose. That must be difficult for her, especially because I bet, based on his actions towards you, Tom is making her feel bad for your behavior. That being said, she's being childish. She doesn't need to apologize for him, but she could have recognized the wrong he did to you and validated your feelings. She could have said you were both being unfair and that apologies could be exchanged like adults. But she didn't. She chose to be the immature and petty one.